A flicker of something like recognition stirred within her, but it vanished before she could seize it. "I don't remember anything about that," she whispered. "I'm just lost." Gamber's eyes, dark and steady, took in her torn dress, her bare feet, and the exhaustion etched into her posture. "Your accent, it sounds like you might be from near the Ndik lands," he said slowly. "Or perhaps from one of the border villages. But you truly remember nothing?" She shook her head, feeling tears threaten. "Nothing but fragments. Dreams." A silence stretched between them, filled by the river's gentle rush. At last, Gamber spoke again. "If you come with me, I can at least take you somewhere safe. My people are skilled at healing. Perhaps one of our wise women can help you recover your memories." Relief coursed through her, followed quickly by uncertainty. She had yearned to find another human being, someone who could guide her. But a small voice inside her warned that she still knew nothing about these lands or about Gamber's true intentions. Yet her exhaustion and desperation won out. She needed help. She nodded. Gamber reached into a small pouch tied at his waist and offered her a strip of dried meat. Though she was wary of unfamiliar foods, hunger overrode caution. She took the piece and chewed it slowly, grateful for the protein after days of surviving on fruits. It tasted salty and faintly spicy. "Thank you," she managed between bites. He nodded, his expression still guarded. "We'll go further downstream," he said, gesturing for her to follow him along the riverbank. "My village, Aawi, is not far. Perhaps half a day's walk if we keep a good pace. We'll need to watch for hyenas and other predators in the grasslands. Stay close." The mention of predators sent a chill through her. So far, she had managed to avoid any real danger, but the thought of facing large, cunning creatures made her realize just how vulnerable she truly was. She stepped nearer to Gamber, and together they set off. The hours blurred as they walked. Gamber proved to be a competent guide, pointing out where the ground might be boggy, warning her away from patches of tall grass where snakes could lurk, and calling her to pause when he spotted a family of warthogs scampering by. Despite his stern demeanor, he occasionally shared bits of information about the region, the names of certain trees, the grazing habits of local antelopes, and fragments of folklore about the spirits said to dwell in the water or the earth. She absorbed these details hungrily, hoping something might stir her memory. At times, she'd ask him, "Does the name of this tree sound familiar? Did I used to live near them?" But he would only shake his head and confess he couldn't say for sure. By late afternoon, the horizon opened up, revealing a scattering of small huts in the distance, circular structures with thatched roofs, surrounded by gardens of cassava and maize. "Aawi," Gamber said, pointing. Relief washed over her at the sight of human habitation. Smoke curled lazily from cooking fires, and she could make out the faint shapes of people moving between the huts. Yet as they drew closer, she noticed an odd tension in the village. A group of villagers stood gathered outside one of the huts, their voices low and urgent. She could sense the apprehension in the air. When they saw Gamber and the woman approach, a few children darted behind their mothers' skirts, peering out with wide, curious eyes. Men bearing spears or bows lowered their weapons slightly, but they did not fully relax. A tall, broad-shouldered man stepped forward. He wore a necklace of carved wooden beads and had an air of authority about him. "Gamber," he greeted, glancing uneasily at the young woman. "We feared the worst when you did not return sooner." Gamber inclined his head respectfully. "Chief Ebony, my journey was longer than expected. I found this woman alone in the wilderness. She has no memory of who she is or where she comes from." Murmurs rippled through the gathered villagers. Chief Ebony's gaze swept over her, taking in her ragged appearance. Despite his stern expression, there was a hint of compassion in his eyes. "Welcome to Aawi," he said, though his tone was cautious. We will not turn you away. Especially in these troubled times. She opened her mouth to speak, but found her throat dry. She managed to whisper, "Thank you." Chief Ebony turned back to Gamber. "Tell me, have you brought news? We have heard rumors of raids near the Ndeek border. Our scouts claim to have seen refugees fleeing south." Gamber's jaw tightened. "I found a piece of Ndeek cloth by the river. Torn and abandoned. I fear they may have been attacked." Another ripple of concern spread through the crowd. The woman felt the eyes of the villagers flick to her, some of them lingering on the red scrap of cloth tucked at her waist. She sensed their unease. "Am I a refugee too?" she wondered. The possibility weighed on her heart. A young woman emerged from behind the chief, her bright eyes watching with keen interest. She wore a simple wrap around her torso and a woven skirt from waist to knee. Her hair was braided close to her scalp, and she carried a small earthenware bowl. "Father," she said, directing a meaningful look at the chief, "our guest needs rest and food. The wise woman is tending to Toma's wounds, perhaps she can see her next." Ebony hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, Zoe. Take her to the elder's hut." "But Gamber," he turned to the young man. "We must speak. Our scouts returned with troubling news." Gamber inclined his head again. "Of course, Chief." Feeling suddenly exposed, the woman watched Gamber follow the chief and a group of men toward another hut. Zoe stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on her elbow. "Come with me," she said softly. "You look exhausted." Despite her apprehension, the woman allowed herself to be led through the village. She tried not to flinch at the curious, suspicious stares of the villagers. A few whispered among themselves, perhaps wondering if she was a spy or a victim of the raids. Yet no one confronted her. If anything, she sensed pity. She offered them a small, uncertain smile, and a few of the villagers hesitantly returned it. Zay guided her to a large hut near the center of the village. Thick smoke drifted from a hole in the roof, and the scent of medicinal herbs hung in the air. Inside, the interior was dim, lit by the glow of a small fire. A wrinkled old woman sat on a low stool, grinding leaves into a paste with a mortar and pestle. 3 younger women assisted her, fetching herbs from baskets or stirring a pot over the flames. The old woman looked up at the newcomers, her eyes sharp despite her advanced years. "Lay her down," she said in a raspy voice, gesturing to a straw mat near the wall. Zoe helped the woman ease onto the mat. In the corner, a young boy lay curled under a thin blanket, his face creased with pain. She realized with a twinge of sympathy that this hut served as a rudimentary clinic. The old woman shuffled over, tapping a gnarled wooden cane against the ground. She peered at the stranger's face, muttering under her breath. No memory, yes." Her cataract-clouded eyes seemed to look right through the young woman. "Yes," the woman managed to say. Her head throbbed, still. My mind is blank." The elder made a soft clicking sound with her tongue. "Then we must call upon the spirit of memory." She turned to one of her assistants. "Fetch the leaves of amandi, the bark of Congo tree, and a pot of clean water. Hurry." While the assistant hurried to gather the materials, the elder turned her attention back to the young woman. She gently placed a hand on the woman's forehead, then drew it down to her chest. The gesture felt both caring and analytical, as though the elder were reading her energy. "You have a strong heart," the old woman murmured. "But your spirit is troubled. There is a shadow around you, child. I can feel it." A knot formed in the woman's throat. I want to remember," she said, forcing the words out. "Is it possible?" The elder's gaze flickered with an emotion that might have been sorrow. Memory is a tricky thing. Sometimes it protects us by hiding truths until we are ready to face them. She looked at Zoe, who stood nearby with concern etched on her features. But we shall do what we can. The mixture I prepare may help unlock her mind, or at least ease the pain that grips her head. The assistant returned with the requested ingredients: a handful of spiky green leaves, strips of fragrant bark, and a clay pot of water. With careful, deliberate movements, the elder added each piece to a smaller pot placed over the fire. A pungent aroma soon filled the air, making the woman's eyes water. Zoe knelt beside her, offering a reassuring smile. Our wise woman is gifted. If anyone can help you, it is her. Grateful for the kindness, the woman closed her eyes, the swirl of herbs and smoke enveloping her senses. She felt a gentle hand lift her head, pressing a bowl to her lips. The liquid was warm, bitter, and slightly sweet. She grimaced but forced herself to swallow. Almost immediately, she felt a tingling sensation spread through her limbs, as though tiny sparks danced under her skin. The hut's interior seemed to waver. Shapes blurred. She heard the fire crackle, the old woman chanting in a low voice, and the hiss of the brew as it simmered. Then came darkness. In that darkness, she dreamed. Colors swirled across her vision, deep reds and oranges, the shades of flickering firelight. She saw silhouettes dancing around a blazing fire, heard the sound of drums pounding a steady rhythm that matched her heartbeat. Laughter mingled with chanting. Then a face appeared, a woman's face, beautiful and regal, wearing elaborate beads in her hair. Her expression was urgent, her eyes pleading. "Run," the woman seemed to say, though no sound emerged. Suddenly, the vision shifted. The same face contorted in fear, and a cacophony of shouts rang out. There was a flash of steel, a sword, a spear, and the terrible sound of screams. The world spun violently. She glimpsed the bright red cloth, stained with something dark, fluttering in the wind. Then blackness. She felt as though she were falling, her body twisting through an endless void. A final image broke through the darkness, the same courtyard she had seen in earlier dreams, the clay walls bright in the sun. She stood in the middle of that courtyard, wearing a flowing dress that shimmered with red and gold patterns. A group of women surrounded her, each wearing similar attire, singing a lullaby-like chant. A name hovered just on the edge of her consciousness. Then it was gone. She jolted awake, drenched in sweat. The interior of the hut came back into focus, fire still glowed in the center, though it had burned low. The old woman was at her side, a hand resting gently on her shoulder. Zoe, too, watched with wide, anxious eyes. "Did you see anything?" the elder asked quietly. Shaking, she tried to form words. There was a courtyard, and dancing. There was, someone told me to run." Tears tracked down her cheeks, unbidden. And then, screaming. I heard screaming. Zoe's grip on her hand tightened. "It's okay," she whispered. "You're safe now." The old woman looked pensive. "These are pieces of your past, child. They swirl together like leaves in a storm. We cannot force them to fit just yet. But do not lose hope." She was too overwhelmed to reply. The elder stood, beckoning Zoe to follow, and they moved a short distance away to speak in hushed tones. The woman on the mat tried to slow her breathing, forcing away the lingering terror from her visions. A single question looped through her mind: who told me to run? And why? The next few days in Aawi passed in a haze. Word spread quickly about the nameless stranger who had arrived with Gamber. Some villagers eyed her with suspicion, while others offered timid kindness, a bowl of porridge, a threadbare cloth to replace her torn dress. She tried to return these gestures with grateful smiles and polite words. At night, She slept in a small hut the villagers reserved for travelers. It was a simple space, a straw mat on the floor, a clay lamp. Yet compared to her nights in the forest, it felt luxurious. Each day, the wise woman, who the villagers called Grandmother Aawi, had her drink the herbal concoction meant to stir her memories. Each day, she drifted into a half-dream state, catching only fleeting, disjointed images, a man placing a necklace around her neck, a swirl of red dust under dancing feet, a swirl of pain and panic. Each time she awakened, a fresh wave of frustration battered her. The memories seemed so close yet remained maddeningly elusive. In the village's open marketplace, a dusty clearing where several small stalls were set up, she began to pick up snippets of conversation. People whispered about raids to the north, about tensions between clans, about an ominous group of warriors rumored to be taking advantage of the unrest. Gamber sometimes walked with her, pointing out the different huts and introducing her to villagers who might share news. He rarely spoke of his own journey, nor did he press her further about her past. Yet she sensed he was troubled by the mounting rumors. One afternoon, as she helped a group of women shell beans by the cooking fire, a flurry of alarmed shouts arose from the far side of the village. She exchanged a worried glance with the other woman, then followed them as they rushed to see what was happening. Near the edge of the maize fields, a scout stood, panting, his tunic torn and his eyes wild with alarm. "They're coming," he gasped. "I saw them, along the river, heavily armed. They wear black tunics and carry spears with strange markings." Fear rippled through the crowd. Chief Ebony appeared, flanked by 2 men with bows. "How many?" he demanded. "Maybe 10 or 15, the scout replied. "I couldn't stay long to count. But they looked fierce." A hush fell over the villagers, many of them turning their gaze to the stranger in their midst. She felt the weight of their suspicion and dread. If these raiders, or whoever they were, reached the village, what would become of her? Would they see her as an enemy, or as some pawn in a conflict she didn't understand? Chief Ebony gestured for everyone to gather. "All who can fight, arm yourselves. Protect the elderly and the children. We will not be caught unaware." A shaky breath escaped her. Even if she wanted to help, she had no idea how to wield a weapon. She felt powerless. Zoe pulled her aside, her voice trembling with determination. "We'll keep the children safe in the meeting hut. Stay with us." The woman nodded, though her heart pounded. She remembered her dream, flashes of violence and terror. The swirling memory of someone telling her to run, of a spear glinting in the sun. She was suddenly certain that what was happening here was tied, in some way, to her lost past. As the villagers scrambled to prepare, she hurried with Zoe toward the largest hut in Aawi, where already mothers and children were gathering. Fear laced the air, making it thick and tense. She held a small child's hand, trying to project calm she did not feel. In the back of her mind, a single thought emerged: if these raiders are connected to what happened to me, then maybe this is my chance to learn the truth. But that truth seemed as dangerous as it was elusive. The sun was dipping low over the grasslands, painting the horizon in fiery streaks of orange and red. Inside Aawi's largest communal hut, tension thickened the air. Women held their children close, the elderly whispered fervent prayers. In the corner, the young woman, still nameless, sat with Zoe, her heart pounding a steady drumbeat in her ears. They could hear the commotion outside as the able-bodied men and women of the village armed themselves with spears, bows, and whatever tools they could wield for defense. She closed her eyes briefly, recalling the swirl of fragmented visions she'd experienced over the last few days. For a moment, she could almost hear drumbeats from another time, another place, her memory a mosaic of flickering images and sounds. A face, pleading. A flash of steel. A swirl of red cloth. A single, resonant command that remained silent on her lips. Zoe placed a hand on her shoulder. "They'll protect us," the girl murmured, her brave tone belied by the tremor in her voice. "Aawi has stood firm against trouble before." The woman managed a shaky nod. She recalled the scouts' warning about a group of unknown raiders wearing black tunics. If they were indeed behind the attacks on the Ndeek people or others along the border, she feared this confrontation might be bloody. Deep in her gut, an unexplained certainty told her these raiders were linked to what had happened to her. Outside, the sounds of raised voices and hurried steps began to swell. The communal hut's entrance flapped open, and Gamber burst in, breathing heavily. His eyes roved over the gathered group, pausing on the woman. "They're close," he said, voice tight with urgency. "Chief Ebony wants all non-combatants to remain here. We've prepared defenses along the outer fields." He nodded toward the woman. "Stay with Zoe. No matter what happens, do not rush outside." She swallowed hard, her chest tight with a mixture of worry and a growing sense of inevitability. Yes," she agreed. She could feel the question burning on her tongue, what if there's something I can do? Yet she held it back. She didn't want to jeopardize the trust Gamber and the others had shown her. Besides, she had no weapon, no skills, only the scraps of her fractured memory and a budding conviction that the raiders might hold the key to unlocking who she really was. Gamber left as swiftly as he had come. Zoe squeezed the woman's hand. "We must trust them," she said, trying to soothe the trembling children who clung to her skirt. The woman nodded, inhaling deeply. Trust. The word felt heavy with unspoken meaning. Somehow, in the middle of her confusion, she had found a measure of safety among these strangers. She owed them her gratitude, yet she also worried that her presence might bring them harm.